The rules are very simple. Complexity is encouraged, the equations are encouraged, and the topic should be sufficient to attract an audience of at least one, to attract and retain an audience of at least one. And I see we have succeeded at that. At least we have I'm trying to think of the right words. Something at the end. Harry Adams is going to finish off at the end with a donation of eclipse glasses. So hopefully this will retain everybody, although that's not the intent. I wanted to ask also to have a show of hands. We sort of chose the 7 o'clock starting time without thinking too much about it. So I'd like a show of hands for next year, that is, whether we should really be starting at 7 or 7:30. So could I have a show of hands? How many of you prefer 7 o'clock starting time? And 7:30? Okay, I guess that answers that question. So, tonight's talk is by Stephen Douglas. I asked him how he wanted me to introduce him, and the answer I got back came something like, Stephen Douglas came to Deep River in 1979, and he was playing backgammon at that point, and today he is still playing backgammon. I've known Stephen since he came, and I'm going to add a few words. While he was working at AACL, he was always engaged in things of mathematical interest, or in the days when AACL did such things. That was mathematically. If you do a search on Google for backgammon and Stephen Douglas, you'll find that there is a Stephen Douglas who appears in some international competitions. And as I introduced him last September, when I introduced this series, I said, if there was a backgammon equivalent of Poker Stars, Stephen would be in it. After that, someone came up to me and said, don't play poker against this guy. So, with that introduction, Stephen.
Thank you, Michael. Fortunately, we're among friends here, right? Backgammon. How many people have played 10 games or more of backgammon in this group? Oh, there goes the talk.
50 years ago.
Okay, everything's different. Well, can you hear me fine? 10,000 years ago, some clever person in a cave not unlike this invented dice. It's not sure whether the dice were used to generate random numbers for some reason, or whether they were used to communicate with the other side. But over the years, dice have been used subsequently in a simple game of, I'm going to race my buddies faster than you're going to race your buddies. And thereby was backgammon created. Flash forward to the Italian Renaissance. Now this part I'm just making up, unlike the last paragraph. Flash forward to the Italian Renaissance, and you find that some clever person decided that carrying this board that's about 8 feet long, because they ran east-west and east-west against each other, that it looked an awful lot easier on the newly invented the newly invented piece of office furniture known as the briefcase. And the briefcase is the perfect place to hide your backgammon board. when your boss is not around. The game is exactly the same as it was then, with one small, incredibly confusing change. And every backgammon player who starts as a novice has done this 5 or 10 or 20 times. One player sits on one side and the other player sits on the other side, and one player moves clockwise and the other player moves counterclockwise. And that is confusing. But it turns out to be exactly the same as the East-West case, only it's much smaller, more portable, and can be easily closed when the boss shows up. So all backgammon games are essentially races. Two-person races, and the dice is what determines the fuel of the game. All of the checkers or stones are moved in response to the roll of fair dice. And all backgammon games are like this. The object is essentially the same. You have to bring all of your checkers all the way around the board and into the home, and then you get to take them off. And much like short track team speed skating, it's not the first checker off that wins, but the last. So you take all the checkers off, and the player who takes off the last checker first, before the other player, wins the game. Roller derby is apparently similar to this, but my recollection of roller derby is more vague. All I remember was the elbow checks. Finally, it's usually played for money. Now, I am not a gambler per se. I'm a games player, but backgammon is more interesting if you play for some stake. Amongst family members, like a brother, it's just for the taunting. With a husband and wife, you can come up with your own stakes. Young kid with the older parent, it's for the honor of playing against the young kid. But if you are not opposed to gambling, it is more fun to play for a small stake. But it's not necessary, because there are other forms of backgammon that do not actually bet money, but are in match form, or a collection of matches in tournament form, or you can play against computers nowadays. So I'm not advocating gambling, but I'm not saying we won't do that. I'm going to use the terminology of gambling to describe what is actually happening. It just happens to be easier to do so. Now, are there any high school students in here? I specifically put that in my request because I'm going to give a short lesson on how to design a video game. You design a video game like the same way you design any other game. And that is, you find the best example of a game and you rip it apart, how it's constructed and what makes it exciting. And then you steal that idea and you write your own game. Unfortunately, the high school students aren't going to find this out hard. I started playing backgammon in 1975, and I got a book early on, and it had 6 or 7 different modern backgammon games in it. And so I decided I would like to play 5 or 6, 7 or 8 games of each and every one of them to decide which was better. And the game I'm about to show you is the winner, because it's the most exciting of all backgammon games. In fact, in my opinion, it's the most exciting gambling game known. So what's wrong with the other 6 games, and what's right with this one? Now, I'm not the only person that believes this, because the other 6 games that I played are not played worldwide, but backgammon is played worldwide by tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people. It's played in the Arab world since antiquity. It's played in Greece and in Turkey. It's played in Northern Europe. It's played in Denmark and Scandinavia. It's played in the United States. It's played in Britain. It's played in, if I missed anywhere, Iran. And the main proof of this is that the current world champions are Japanese, and the previous world champions are Danes, and the ones before that were in Northern Europe, and so on and so on and so on. So this game, with these rules, is worldwide, and none of the other backgammon games are. So why is this? So the first reason is somebody has carefully crafted the rules so that it enhances the excitement. For example, the dice, 2 fair dice, 6-sided, will produce the moves that the checkers or stones will make. If you roll 6-1, you get to move 1 for 1 checker and 6 for another. If you roll 5-3, you get to move 5 for 1 checker and 3 for another. If you roll 3-3, double 3s, a change in the rule causes you to get 4 3s to play. This is not like in craps, at a craps table at a casino, where the doubles don't double. And that changes more or less everything. Whereas at a craps table, the average on the dice is a triangle distribution, and it's peaking at 7. With the doubles playing double, it becomes skewed. The whole distribution becomes skewed. That means there's more of the higher numbers than lower numbers. And when you calculate the average roll of the dice in backgammon, you add up over all 36 rolls, you add that all up, divided by 36, with fair dice, you get the number 49 over 6, which is 8 and a bit, is the average distance you travel with the average roll. And then we count the number of rolls that are above that average, and we count the number of rolls that are below that average. There are 12 rolls above that average, and there are 24 rolls below that average. So now we've created a racing game that's like the British royal family. 12 rolls are above average, and the plebs are below average, and those are 24. So somehow, to improve the chances of the ones falling behind the average, we have to do something to impede the ones that are getting ahead. And this is done with 2 very simple rules. The first rule is, if there are 2 or more checkers on the same point, a point is one of those triangles up there, if there are 2 or more checkers on that point, let's say 2 black checkers on that point, a white checker cannot land on that. It impedes. So it's possible to build blocking that will slow down the times that you get high rolls and want to run away, because it is a foot race generally. The other idea is that if there are no checkers on a point, each of these is a point, the pointy-looking point. If there are no checkers on the point, then all's fair game and you can land on there. But if there's 1 checker on a point, let's say there's a white checker on a point, then the black player rolling the black dice and moving a black checker onto that lone white checker, which is called a blot. It hits it, and okay, I have it back on the screen. It hits it, and it's lifted from the board and put in the middle. Right. I'm finally at the diagram, and this diagram disappears. It puts it in the middle on the bar. That's called the bar, and there a hit checker called a blot rests until it enters, and then everything continues. So black cannot move his checkers backwards, and white cannot move her checkers backwards. But if black hits a white blot or white hits a black blot, then the checkers go backwards. So the opponent can slow you down, but you cannot. Okay. Those two add enough strategic and tactical complexity to slow down the fast runners. So you now can build a strategy and a tactic to counterbalance just a quick race. The other idea is how many checkers. Now, if there are 2 dice and the values on the dice are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and each die is moving 1 checker, you're going to need a board that's at least as big as the biggest roll, which would be double 6s. So double 6s, you might recall, means you can move something 4 6s. So we're going to need 24 points, at a minimum, maybe more. This board here appears to have 24 points. It actually has 4 more points. 2 of them are the bar, which is where all of these checkers are located. And the other 2 is the what I prefer to call the bathtub, because I remember popping my 3 kids into the bathtub to get them cleaned up. And the checkers will ultimately leave the board and end up in the bathtub and be when all of them are there, that's when someone is declared the winner. So we have 24 points, we have 2 on the bar, and we have 2 bathtubs. So there's 28 playing positions. Now there could have been 128 playing positions, but to increase the contact, to increase the excitement and the choices, the board is as small as conceivable for the dice. This is obviously designed, if you look at it in retrospect. If some of these 6 versions of Backgammon that I didn't particularly like started with all their checkers off the board, somewhat similar to this, and brought them all in, and this took quite a while, and it was not an exciting experience. So somebody came up with what I think is more or less the perfect initial condition, and that is shown here. First off, there are 2, okay, first off, who's going this direction, right? Okay. This is black's home board there. And this is white's home board there. And black has to run these checkers clockwise into the home board, and white has to run these checkers counterclockwise into her home board. And the other checkers also have to run clockwise for black into the home board, and the other checkers also have to run counterclockwise into the home board. And once they're in there, if you recall, they're to be taken off. So the bathtubs are right there and right there. Okay. So this starting configuration is a little bit like a chess opening. It's not possible to hit a blot because there aren't blots. They haven't come into the game yet. There's an emergent behavior, as it's sometimes called in game theory. And they're only points, and they're designed to stop the high doubles. So if black rolls a double 6, he can move 4 6s, as you recall. He can move 2 from here to there, but he can't move again to here because that's blocked. If black rolls double 5s, and he wants to get his runners running, he can't move them ahead because the 5s are blocked here. So the highest doubles are essentially selected to block right at the opening. Oh yes. Now in chess, white plays before black, and so obviously you don't want to be the player that plays black, you want to be the player that plays white. But we know this is fair because it's symmetrical across the board, and the game is kept fair by the first roll only. You roll 1 die, not 2, and the person with the higher die plays both. So if black rolls 1 and white rolls 3, then white plays 3-1. So if you both roll 5 and 5, you re-roll. So suddenly the dice themselves choose who starts. So there's no advantage being on either side of the board, unlike in chess. And then there is a small bit of lawyering involved in what are legal moves. But we won't get into the details, but there will be a couple examples. Okay. Let's take a look here. This is the initial spot again, and I claim that this is the most exciting gambling game that I'm aware of. And I'm going to show you the second most boring game. Black starts, and he rolls 6-4, and he has to move either the 4 or the 6, and they're both open. They're both open, that spot's open or that spot's open. Once he does that, he can use the same checker if he wishes and continue onwards. So the roll of 6-4 makes it all the way to here. Similarly, white rolls 6-5, and the 5 is blocked but not the 6, so he's able to play 6 first and then 5 with the same checker. That's called lover's leap, in fact. This is another 6-4, same story, and this is another 6-5. So despite all the effort that's gone into stopping the runners from getting ahead, in both cases they're more or less gone, right? So all of this strategy, the tactics that's based on the slower rolls, preventing and blocking advancement, here we have a game that's suddenly going to be a straight race. So here we are, basically, when both sides realize that there's going to be no blot hitting and there's going to be no blocking, there's going to be no mate point, it's going to be a race. Now, this is not a foot race like you and I to get to the coffee. Black and white are taking turns, right? So there will be a winner. There's never a tie in backgammon. There will be a winner. And we shall see what happens here. So black and white first have to bring their checkers into their house and then take them all off, correct? About 6 rolls, 7 rolls each have gone by. And black has finally brought all of his checkers into his house. And white's almost done the same, except white has rolled not quite as well and has 3 stragglers out in the outfield. So now black may start to take them off. Black took a roll before and then white rolled, and now we're to this one. And black can take the deuce off, but there's no 3 to take off. So they have to come off exactly. So the 6-3 fills the gap, so if another 3 appears, then that will be off. And that's called the bear off. The whole thing at this stage is called the bear off. And again, white has some rolls and black has a roll. 6-1 takes the 6 off and slips down from the 5. And a few more rolls later, we have 4-1 is added together, well, 4 and then 1, and that one comes off. And now, a couple rolls later, double 4s, 3 of the black checkers come off and one of them fills the 1 point. And this is several rolls later, and this is right before the end of the game. As it turns out, black is guaranteed to win this game. The thing about
It's black's move.
it is black's move. You can tell, it's hard to see, but you can tell the little snake-eye dices are flipping up and down to tell you who's on the move. So in the lower right corner, you can, that tells you that black is going to roll. Okay, so I mentioned that, well, I didn't mention, but much of the skill that comes in from backgammon is using the dice to your advantage, the fairness of the dice, the fact that since each side of the dice is equally likely, you can predict the probability, or you know the probability of each roll. So if black rolls an ace, a 1, except for double 1s, black will not be able to take his 2 checkers off, but if black rolls any other roll, he will. So in this particular case, well, that's too fast. Okay, black takes him off. So black has won this game. And that's the second most boring backgammon game in existence. The only more boring one is 6-5 levers leap, 6-5 levers leap, 6-5 levers leap, 6-5 levers leap, and then do the same thing that I just did. Now, I skipped ahead because I mentioned that the average roll is 49/6, which is a little more than 8. And from all those starting positions, from the starting position, it takes 20 rolls each just to run home and take them off. Roughly, it's a ballpark. So I could have showed you 40, and therefore I believe you should be thankful that there was only too many. Okay. Here's another example, though. This one will be more interesting. This is in the late end game, and white's turn now, and white has rolled 6-2. Black is ready to bear off, having all the checkers inside the house, but none have been taken off yet. And white is now bringing the checkers in as quickly as possible. And now black rolls and takes a 6 off and the deuce off. That's easy. And then white rolls. Now this is actually, this is a position where you could make a mistake, but white has done well here and come up with a good idea. So 1 comes in and 1 comes off. And this is where the lawyers get involved. There's no 6 for black to play. So the 6 point is empty now, but it's a reasonable legal decision. You were not punished for wasting the roll, wasting the 1 pip from 6 to 5. In other words, you can use a 6 to take off a 5 if there's no other 6s. So that sounds fair. So the pace of taking the checkers off and the bear off will remain pretty relevant. And here we have 1 and 3 coming off for white. And again, the 6-1 thing, 6 lets you take the 5 off and the 1 takes the 1 off. And then the 5-3 takes 2 off. And then again, the 6-3 lets you take the top 1 off and the 3rd. And now white gets a fair shake. White doesn't have a 5 or a 6 to play, so the 4 comes off, and so does the 1. And again, the 6-1 and 3-1, and then 6-5 and 2-1. And black could win this on this roll if he rolled a double. Any of the doubles will win. Double sixes, fives, double fours, double threes, double twos, even double ones will win. But black did not roll a double, and so white's going to get one more chance. If white rolls a certain number, he can take all four off. Now that has to be a double, because if you roll a non-double, then you can only move 2 checkers. So it's double threes, double twos, and double ones that miss, and all of the other non-doubles, and the double four, double five, and double six would take all 4 checkers off. So any guesses on the probability of that happening? Yes?
Oh, 3 out of 36.
That is correct. Very good. 3 out of 36, or 1 in 12. Not as lucky as that today. So the white will lose. Actually, it was a foregone conclusion 2 ago, but it doesn't matter. Okay. All right, so the first round of skill comes when you're when you apply the dice to figuring out tactical objectives. In probability, we call them events. In the game, they're the tactical objectives. So let's say you needed a 5. What is the probability of rolling a 5 with those 6 dice? Well,
Dice,
I think I'll do this one, if you don't mind. 2 dice, yes? So the first point is that there's 5, 1, 1, 5, because they're twins, they appear twice. 5, 2, 2, 5, 5, 3, 3, 5, 5, 4, 4, 5, 5, 6, 6, 5, and double 5. So there's 11. So a direct shot for 5s is 11. Now, a direct shot for 6 is also 11. And a direct shot for 3 is also 11. And a direct shot for 2 is also 11. And a direct shot for 1 is also 11. And a direct shot for 4 is also 11. And that's 66. And there's only 36 die. There's only 36 outcome coming from 2 die. So what that means is that we must have double counted somewhere, right? So if you need a 5 and a 2, it's not 22 shots, it is 20, because the 2 and the 5 was double counted. So by using arguments of counting with that, you can figure out essentially every chance of achieving a tactical objective, every event. And these come in 2 types. They come, if there are 2 events, for example, let's say you needed a 5, but you didn't roll a 5, but 1 4 and 2 3 do the job, right? So the 5 would be 11, and then there would be 13, and another 2 would be 15, to be 15 shots and 36. That would roll a 5, either a direct or with combinations. So once you interknit all that, and remember you've got to kick out the duplicates that have already been included, such as needing a 1 and a 2, it's 20, not 22. Then you have all of the tools of answering questions about what tactical objectives you can achieve. And that is where your first round of skill enters. So this takes practice, and then it takes wisdom to apply it in the appropriate places. There's no point in applying it to a place where you can't actually achieve a tactical objective. Like, you're not going to make a move that has any bearing on winning. So you have to decide which you calculate and which you play by your sense of the flow of the game. So the most important thing is to have the flow of the game, and the second is to know how to make decisions. Okay. Now we come to the main reason that backgammon is the greatest gambling, it's the most exciting gambling game there is. And that is, 100 years ago, every backgammon game ended like the boring race. This is true. 90 years ago, someone has already invented, so sometime in that time period, a way of changing the definition of victory. Now, you may or may not have noticed that there's a little object which is called the cube, and it's had a couple different readings on it, and there's a cube right there. That is used to double the stakes. So the etiquette of it is, before you roll, the cube starts in the middle. This one isn't, but whoops. Okay. That cube's in the middle, 64. It says 64 because the fact it's in the middle means that you can just assume it's 1, and you won't get confused. So essentially, it's at 1 in the middle of the board. And it's accessible to either white or black before they roll. Okay? So let's say let's say before, who's on the rolling? Black. Before this roll, 6-3, black could have chosen to suggest that we double the game's value from 2 to 4. And if the game's value is the stake, the stake is doubled from 2 to 4, and white has 2 choices only. White can accept the increase in stake from 2 to 4 and play on, or white can resign this game and pay 2. The game is finished right then and there, and essentially 2 points are taken off the score sheet of whites and given to black. Those are the only 2 choices. Now, it might not sound like it, but suddenly there's a pressure in the positions. So if you think that you're winning by a fair bit, you can take away all of the wonderful wild luck of the opponent by doubling the stakes higher and having them quit. Or, if you want to be a little more risky, you can double earlier and duke it out at higher stakes where you have an advantage, but not an overwhelming advantage. So suddenly there's skill on both sides of the equation there. And the only way you can realize which is through experience. Okay. So 6-3 here. Black takes off one of his checkers. There's only 3 actual plays there. But he takes the 6 off and then moves one of the checkers down. It's actually the 5 checker moves to the 2. And then white could have won the game by rolling 6-4, but rolls double ones and gets the 4-point white checker off. At this stage, black has the cube and is thinking, wow, being on the 2-4, how close is that? If I figured out all of the shots, we call them shots, the specific rolls that take both checkers off to win the game, you learn that you are a favorite. Black is a favorite to take off those two checkers right now. Not a big favorite, but a favorite. So black offers the double. It's from 2 to 4. And white has to figure out whether to take it. Now, that's not obvious, but white does take this. So now black has to roll with white owns the cube at 4. Let's back up one. What? Oh, yeah, back and forth. Okay, well, let's work out black's chance of bearing off in this position. First of all, any one, the roll of any one will fail. Now we know how many there are there. 11. There's always 11 for direct number. And then there's any combos. Turns out that 3-2 is a combo. So black will fail to take his checkers off, to bear his checkers off 13 rolls out of 36, and the 23 rolls out of 36. He will take the checkers off. So that's the proof that he's black was a favorite here. Unfortunately, he rolls one of the bad ones. And now the question becomes, how likely is it for white to take his checker off? Well, this takes a little bit of adding, but it turns out that it's 9 rolls won't take the checker off, and 27 rolls will. So before black started all this, black owned the cube and seemed to be in the race, like a leader in the race. But white says, okay, I'm going to win 3 games. For every one I lose, I'm going to double back. So white offers the cube back to black at 8. And black thinks about it for a while and decides to accept the cube. Now the stake's at 8. And white takes off his final checker and wins the game. So 4 or 5 plays, it's taken black with the cube, owning the cube at 2, making a double, a redouble, missing, having a double come back on it, accepting, and then losing. So within 5 exchanges, black has gone from probably winning 2 points to definitely losing 8. That's a huge swing, and these are common in backgammon. And pretty much every poker player would be ranting and jumping up and down like Phil Hellmuth about such a bad beat. But this is typical in backgammon, so there are big swings in the game. Okay, the doubling cube itself has a grip on modern backgammon, and it's only been around 90 years, and it's always used in tournaments, and it's generally always used in any other cash games or whatever you want to call them. Yeah. But there must be a point at which it's good to double and when it's not good to double. So let's suppose that it's another race, and your chance of winning is 3 and 5. And the cube is at 1. And your chance of losing, therefore, is 2 and 5. So if let's say black is winning and white is losing, underdog. Twice 2 and 5 minus twice 3 and 5 is 2 and 1 and 5, which is 40 cents would be lost on the dollar by white. But if white That's if white takes the cube. If white doesn't take the cube and drops, he pays a whole dollar. So statistically, or if you repeat it a million times, you will lose 40 cents by taking the cube, but you will lose a whole dollar by passing it. So that's when the winner is at 3/5. So that's an example of somebody losing but accepting a higher raise in the stakes, right? Let's try 4/5. If we do the same thing, dropping the cube, you lose a dollar, but taking the cube, you lose $1.20. So if you only have 1/5 chance, you shouldn't be taking the cube. And so obviously there's a point in between where there is a perfect balance. 2/3, if it's minus 1/3 plus 1/3 minus 2/3 times twice the stake, you'll lose 66 cents by taking the cube, and you'll lose a whole dollar by dropping it. Finally, if black wins 3 games out of 4, and white wins 1 game out of 4, then white will lose $1 for sure if white drops, and if white takes and plays through the same situation a million times, he will also lose $1. So when the odds are 3-1, or 1/4 and 3/4 for the probability, you are stuck in a situation where you're definitely going to lose the stake. And that is understanding these positions will tell you when to drop the cube and when to take the cube. I worked this one out recently for about the nth time. No, we'll leave that point out. Yeah. Okay. I should emphasize that if you take the cube, you are the sole owner of the cube. Only you can double. The person that doubled you doesn't get a chance to double you over and over and over again and move after move after move. That's gone. Only the person that took the cube can make the next cube. Okay. All right. The next big item here, and of course this was in the game design area. If you don't take a checker off before your opponent takes all the checkers off, such as in this position, there's a bunch of white checkers, 3 of them are in the outfield, and 12 of them are in the home. And with double 2s, black can take all 4 of those checkers off. And he satisfied the game's criteria for victory. The rule is that white loses twice as much. It's called a gammon. It's automatic. It's required. There's no way out. And so white will lose 4 points, or $4. He loses the $2 from losing the game, and he also loses the extra $2 because he's gammon. He's never taken any checkers off before black took all the checkers off. So that again adds to the excitement, because sometimes you're scrambling to become just a simple loser and simply lose a single game instead of losing the gammon. So you might do crazy stuff to accomplish that. I thought I had more than that. Okay. All right, yes, I just went in the wrong direction, that's all. Okay, here's another example of a gammon. This one is pretty straightforward. And now it's white on black. Black has a huge number of checkers there, and white's taking off. Each of these cases, the stakes double. In this case, black would be paying 4 by losing. Okay. This is a game fragment. It looks like, well, firstly, black's on the bar. So black has to come in, if you recall, here. Come in here. He has to come in this way, and they're going clockwise, right? So he's currently on the bar. The fact that he's on the bar now meant that his previous roll, he rolled a 1-3 or a 2-2 or a 3-1 or 2-3 or anyway, both his dice were below 4 basically. Okay, so white takes 4 checkers off here. Sorry about this. Somehow this goes the opposite direction, but that's just me. Okay, so four white checkers come off, and now black rolls the deuces from 2 deuces from the bar and comes in. So he comes into the 2, moves to the 4, moves to the 6, and then the 5-1 is going to cross over. So he's left with this situation here. And white rolls, and white's checkers come off. And now black is gammoned, right?
Backgammon.
Yeah. But because he doesn't have a checker out, because he does have a checker inside his opponent's home board, the stake is tripled instead of doubled. So this would be a 6-point loss. Now, you can't really play skillfully to backgammon somebody. You can try, but it's having really bad luck for the backgammon guy. So these occur relatively infrequently, but it's always a threat. Yeah, okay. All right. Just because there's a certain number of pips or a distance that checkers have to travel doesn't mean the probabilities of accomplishing an event is the same. Here we have the last roll of black, and the checkers are on the 1-6, so the total pips are 7, right? And here we have 2 checkers on the 2-5, and the total pips are 7. And here we have checkers on the 3-4, and the total pips are 7. So this is a homework question. One of these cases, black is two of these cases, black is an underdog, and one of these cases, black is a favorite. And yet the totals are the same in terms of distance, right? So that tells you that you have to actually do some of these shot counts occasionally, because otherwise you'll be losing more than you need to. Okay. So far, most of the math has been arithmetical. Backgammon is not unique, but it's a little different from most games of chance that you might play, particularly card games, in that it has what's known as the Markov property. It's a mathematical idea. A Markov property applies to systems with probabilities, so some form of like dice or shuffled cards or whatever. And it's a pretty easy idea, but it's profound in its implications. The Markov property means that the probability of your winning chances of a position do not depend on how you got into that position. There could be one circuitous path, there could be another one, but once you get into the position we're discussing, the probability of winning is independent, or it doesn't depend on the path that got there. In other words, there's no memory. There's no memory of the past in the game. So this means that all you need to know, and all that you can know in each position of a game or a dynamical system that has the Markov property is the current position. Now, first of all, it does simplify things. But let me give you an example, a quick example, of a game situation, a different game, gin rummy. My wife and I like to play gin rummy. And the cards are shuffled, so there's a randomization there. And I won't explain the whole game, but there's up cards and down cards, and you throw a card and you pick up a card and so on. If you memorize, or if I memorize, all of the cards that Catherine picks up, or then throws back down, if I recall those for the game, I can figure out where she's going, right? And that's an example of the past path affecting the probability of winning from the position in the future. So gin rummy, poker, because the turn, well, Texas Hold'em poker, the turn could have 4 different flops, right? The 4 cards on the turn could have come in 4 different ways, so you could have figured out something there. And basically all of bridge do not have the Markov property. The whole idea of bidding is to convey the information of something or other, and then the defense in bridge, you need to remember how many of this and how many of that are out there. So backgammon doesn't need the memory bit, whereas these other games do. And that makes it somewhat unusual and in some ways easier. However, there are 36 rolls on the dice, and for each of these rolls, basically you have to select the best play. There could be no play that you can make. There might be 1 play, there might be 2. For each of the rolls, there may or may not be choices. And the average number of choices is in the hundreds. Well, the average isn't in the hundreds. They can be in the hundreds. The average is in the dozens and dozens and dozens. So this is called, this is quite different from, say, chess and most other games. So this is called the branching ratio, and backgammon has a huge branching ratio. The branching ratio comes from the 36 rolls that could occur, and from the many, many choices of position that the move you make that you have to decide on. So that makes backgammon more complicated than these other games. So the easier part and the more complex part sort of average out, and who's to say which is a better game. But the key point is that the memory is not needed to establish the probability of winning in backgammon. You just need the current position. Now, what this suggests, it's not a theorem, what this suggests is that the structures that come about need to come about from the rules, which is blocking on a point, and hitting a blot and sending them back, and running at a certain pace. So those are the three rules. they will give rise over an exchange, the black roll and the white roll, and then the black roll and the white roll. They will give rise to a very small number of game plans, essentially 3 game plans. You can run, you can block, and you can attack. Because if the memory of the path is washed out 2 or 3 exchanges in the future, there's no point in writing a plot like Tolstoy's that goes on for centuries, right? The active ingredient, the parts of the game flow come from the fact that there's no memory due of the pathway requirements for the probability of winning. There's only the current exchange between the 2 players, 1 or 2 exchanges deep. So it simplifies the strategic aspect, but it also, because of the choices of move and the branching ratio, essentially, it means that more or less the 3 game plans are always there until the very end, where either the cube stops the game with a pass, or it all coalesces into a race. So much of the game is based around that. Okay, let's take a quick look at a game. 3-1 is an important point, makes it. So that's a blocking point. 6-2, white starts the bar and brings down a builder. So basically they just want to get moving. 6-2, so this one hits the white blot and then lifts the black checker and puts him on a friend's point. Double 5s. Now white is on the bar, and white cannot do anything until he brings in the checker on the bar. The checker on the bar does not make it in with double 5s. So that roll's gone, and it's black's turn again. Black thinks, maybe I should double now. Black does double. I'm not sure whether white will take or not, but it's pretty early in the game, so I think white will probably take. And then, so white takes, and then black rolls 3-2 and makes a 3rd home point. So the blocking part, we're witnessing both a hit and a block, all mixed in. The hit is very effective because white danced. It's the jargon is if white doesn't bring his checker in from the bar, he's dancing like a saloon dancer on the bar. Again, this particular roll, white can't make it in. The 3, I hope you do see that part is key. That 3 and that 5 are already occupied, and white's supposed to bring them in. Remember, white's going counterclockwise and has to enter at the farthest point. So basically, I'm cutting the game fragment there. That is which topic? Oh yeah, trio of game plans. Yes, we're already in that. Okay, that's another quick one here. 6-4, 6-5. Now, if you're not asleep and you did pay attention at the very beginning, this was the opening roll of the boring game, but neither of the plays is what occurred before. And so that's an example of more than one play being acceptable in a certain situation. The previous case, the 6-4 ran all the way out. In this case, it runs part way and brings down a builder on the 4. And then the 6-5 was the lover's leap before, but now white's gone completely crazy and hit 2 blots, not just the 1. And all of these combinations are good plays. So there's plenty of scope for style, but there are plays that are better than other plays. So black had two checkers on the bar, but only one gets in, and the white checker in White's house, the blot in White's house, is safe and missed for the moment. And here we have a 5-4, and so that can point right on the head of the other black blot. So that's not good for black, it's very good for white. Two black blots on the bar, white comes in with the ace and hits the white blot. Now, there's a lot of blots being hit here, but this one costs white 3 average rolls, because this is as close as white can get to the bathtub, to bearing off. And now it's put on the bar, and it's got to come in here. So it's lost 24 pips, or approximately 3 average rolls. So, believe it or not, black's not doing badly. White is still leading in this game, but that's a pretty hefty hit. Okay, white comes in and then spreads his checkers so that he can try to pick up the blot that's the black blot that's closest to the bottom of the page or the board. In comes the black's blot with a 5, and to avoid being hit by the 3 white blots targeting it, the black blot buttons up inside the house there. White hits again and makes an anchor at the 20 point at the bottom. Black comes off the bar, hits, and then jumps out. White comes off the bar and then hits back. Black comes off the bar, and then another checker goes by, hits a blot. This is a real game, I didn't make this one up. White comes off the bar and then hits the other checker. Black comes off the bar and hits that checker. White rolls double 6s. White's on the bar, but white can't come in because the only point black has in his home happens to be on the 6 point, and so white dances. Black rolls 5-3 and makes a point, puts 2 white checkers on the bar. White rolls double 1s, a very good roll. Brings 2 in and makes a point in his home. And now white has 3 home points and black has 2. Black rolls 6-1 and runs over from one outfield to the other. White rolls 6-3 and hits this one. Black rolls double 6s, and that's blocked, so he's dancing and cannot move any other checkers. White rolls double 6s and can move to bring checkers close to home for an attack and to flood the outfield. Black dances with double 3s, loses his turn. White hits loose from the 7 to the 4, putting the second blot on the bar, so there's 2 checkers on the bar, and then brings a good cover over to the 10 point. Black brings 1 but not 2 of the checkers in. White takes a deep breath and doubles. There's been 24 rolls, 22 rolls, and 13 blots have been hit. So this is an example of one of these 3 game plans in action. This is the attack mode, the hitting mode, the ones that put the blots, hit the blots and put them on the bar. And the player who is taking the worst of it is suddenly doubling the player who had the best of it. Black thinks for a while and passes. quarter after, is it? How about 5 more minutes? Okay. Has anybody seen the movie A Beautiful Mind? It's a biopic about John Nash, made by Ron Howard with Russell Crowe. And John Nash was a famous mathematician who unfortunately suffered from mental illnesses throughout his life. John Nash made several discoveries, but one major league discovery. He discovered what's called the Nash equilibrium. And the Nash equilibrium is in game theory. It's used in game theory, but not just games like board games, but war, business, anything that can be competitive. And in the movie, when he's playing pool, and they're at a university, so they're all university students, and they're talking about how they can approach the pretty girls on the other side of the bar, and this, that, and the other. And then John Nash has his idea about the Nash equilibrium. And this is a big topic in current poker. It's called game theory optimal. But the Nash equilibrium occurs in most games. There are precursors to it, but in most games. In poker, it doesn't help you win. It helps you lose less. It means that they can't get the up on you, that the situation is as bad as it's going to get, and you're in charge of that, not the other person. So in backgammon, it's not as fundamental as in poker, but it occurs. So regarding, okay, it's black's roll, and it's before he's rolled, and so he can double if he wishes. In this position, black can double, and white will take, or black can wait, and the game continues. The probability of winning, or the equity of the quantity of money you're winning, is exactly the same in this position. So this is a Nash equilibrium. White doesn't even care, because white is going to take, for sure, if black doubles, or if white or black waits, it may never come up. So it's not white that is thinking about this, it's black. But having a Nash equilibrium for the double means they're perfect, well, not perfect, they're excellent study positions. Because if you describe the 3 game plans as they are in this situation, and then you know that it would be a take, a double or a not double, just wait, then it tells you the mix. It's like a balancing act for the mix. So that's not too important specifically, but it's an example of the Nash equilibrium. So this is another example. The black situation can double or not. In both cases, white will continue. We would take or discontinue. This is another example of a Nash equilibrium. Black can double or not. Another one. Black is basically hoping to hit that blonde. Black could double or not. All right. You've seen this one before, actually. This was when the cube went to 8, if you recall. Actually, the black checker was one farther back, but that's irrelevant since the minimum roll on the dice is 3, so it doesn't matter. Okay, so in this case, it was, you lose the stake when you pass, or when you accept the double, statistically, you lose the stake again. In other words, in this case, it's -2 if you pass. But if you take it and you play it 1,000,000 times, you lose on average -2. So that is a case where you can take it, the cube, or you can pass the cube, and it's equal. So this is Nash equilibrium, therefore. So in this position, it is very, very helpful to recall or memorize positions like this, or at least know what they look like. This is another case. This is another Nash equilibrium for taking or passing. So they come up fairly regularly, but not every game. Okay. So that's a lot of math speak, and that's a lot of white and black dots on green background, and what the heck is the guy talking about in the examples. But the most important thing about this talk and backgammon is, it is the most exciting gambling game, in my opinion. And I bet it is true for you. And the only way you can find out about this is to give it a whirl. So I'm suggesting, do yourself a favor, even if you don't like counting shots or Nash's equilibrium or any aspect of that, dust off that backgammon board and set it up, have a few games, have some fun, and enjoy the square root of much as I enjoyed it. I have a sign-up sheet in case not beginners, novices want to be in a tournament that is safe and so on, where they can just learn. And if you're an experienced player, and I am always looking for clients, right? So I noticed that the majority of the people held up their hands and said they played before and all that. Put that down there, and we could arrange time to play. So I'd like to thank you for your patience, and thank you for inviting me. Sure. But I think if people want to leave, they can be allowed.
We've got Harry, he's not going to...
Oh, right.
Bruce, Stephen, how do humans do against computers in backgammon?
I can tell you it every day. There is an excellent computer program, and that is actually one of the things I wanted to talk about, but I won't. But the development of computer backgammon was one of the major triumphs of AI 30 years ago. It was done by the same guy that helped write Watson at John Watson, Jerry Tesoro. So the world's top players strive to play as well as the computer program that provided those graphics. I should say thank you to Javier and Extreme Gammon Company, which has provided computer backgammon, the best in the world, for the last 15 years.
So what's the probability of a human winning?
Oh, quite high. Luck is very big. Yeah. An expert player, which I am, an expert player would probably win 6 and lose 7. A weaker player would be a little off of that. Yeah. But it does depend on how many beer I've had.
Is backgammon in casinos?
It is not.
Idea for casinos.
Actually, what's not good No, what's beautiful for me and you and bad for casinos is there's no way for them to get paid. Because I'm at let's say I'm at one of the hotel rooms at the casino, and you and I want to play. Why are we out on the floor? Why don't we just go back to your place, have a drink, play some games? So casinos do hold tournaments sometimes, but generally backgammon is fair and square. Like there's no rake.
Yeah.
So the rules are they're codified now in the last 30 years. So that's why we're not casinos. Yes.
What's the strongest cell phone program?
I don't own a cell phone, so I have to defer to the others.
I've got one on my phone. But
Okay,
it's
so-
not as strong.
Yeah, XG comes in XG standing for Extreme Gammon. There is a cell phone version. My version does Monte Carlo calculations, finds all my mistakes, and there's a lot of mistakes, and so on. But you can just play the world's top player on a cell phone by purchasing a copy of XG. I don't know the price, but it used to be like 50 US or something. Yeah.
Did you ever play the game, the backgammon game on the old Trash 80? Came in a cassette.
Oh, no, I didn't.
Well, I figured it cheated. It
Yeah.
used to double and then give itself the most great
Oh, yeah, that's right.
dice.
The XG and all other ones allow you to look at the dice distributions of the past so that you can detect that. Furthermore, you can flip essentially shift or flip black and white dice and rerun it, and you will find that it's fun. It wouldn't pay for it to cheat, right? It wouldn't pay the company for it to cheat. But more important than that, they're using all of the stuff I blathered on about accounting and this and that. They don't need to cheat to me. You had a question, Mike?
No, I was going to suggest you take the mic.
Oh, sorry. Familiar face back there.
In the movie you mentioned, did Russell Crowe get the girl?
Yes, of course he did. It is Hollywood, after all.
What are the names of the 6 games you referred to?
Oh, I can't actually recall some of them. They are in the back of Oswald Jacobs' book. One is Placato. That's the Greek version, and if memory serves me right, instead of, this is a very good question because it comes
Can you
into.
speak into the mic?
Sorry. Okay, is this better? Yeah, one is Placato, and instead of hitting the block, picking it up, putting it on the bar, and forcing it to come in first, it freezes it right to the board. So you have a white blot that was just hit by a black checker, and as long as the black checker sits in the white blot, then the white blot can't move. And then then white can go and land on top of that black blot and pin them each. Now, that sounds like a lot of fun, and I thought it was, but the trouble is it has the wrong time scale. So the time scale, the pace of the game is the 49/6. It's the 8 and a bit average roll. Because if you can't go backwards by choice, it's flowing, right? And that defines a time scale. The building up all the points and blocking and the partial primes and stopping the runners from leaving, that's a longer time scale. So to have a more exciting game, you want the third game plan to be shorter than those two. And the hitting the blot, this is my opinion, then hitting the blot, sending it to the bar and having it immediately come in farther away than it was, is much better for the excitement of the game. Then there's a Turkish backgammon where you bring all the checkers on from that original picture, the bar, 15 checkers. That takes forever. So there are lots of skill, but they're not better in excitement. There's two more modern ones than what I'm on. This is perfect for children, young children. It's called, what is it called? Anyway, it has exactly the same rules as this. Oh, Hyper. It's called Backgammon. It has exactly the same rules for this. It has 3 checkers only, and they start as far away as possible, but not as points. So they're on the 24 point, the 23 point, and the 22 point, and they run. And the other one's starting this way, and they run. And if they hit, same rules, but you can only make 1 point. So suddenly the blocking aspect is missing. That one was invented in the 80s. And then one of the world's better players from 25 years ago, best players from the world 25 years ago, Knack is his nickname. It's like circuitous here, isn't it? Nick name. Knack. What he did was take the 5th checker on the midpoint and the 5th checker on the home point and make a second point in the distant home. In other words, he turned the starting point into a backgammon. The backgammon is structural. A backgammon has 2 or more anchors inside the opponent's house. So there was 1 anchor on the farthest point. The runners are that anchor, but there's another anchor. So that means structure is overwhelmingly important. Now, if you want to do like an MS thesis on the structure of backgammon, you would probably look into that. But in terms of the excitement, it doesn't qualify. AC Deucey was the game that Winston Churchill recommended in the First World War that the British sailors use. He liked backgammon for the simple reason that the board would not fall over when the ship heeled over. Most other games, the pieces will fall over, right? And that's all I can remember at the moment. I think that is 6, though.
Thank you.
Scott, did you have a question?
I already asked it. No. I don't have any questions.
Okay. Okay.
We got Jane.
Well, there's a website, 247backgammon.org, and when I play it on my laptop at home, I almost always win, but when I play it against the computer, I win less than 50%. Playing on, sorry, the computer at the library, and the internet at the library, I win less than 50% of the time.
Approximately how many games have you played on?
A lot.
1,000?
Like I'll go up to 50, like when I play on the expert level, like I'll go up to 15 points and use the doubling cube, and usually the computer wins when I'm at the library. But,
Okay. Well, I recommend you get a program that the other fanatics are using. So I would start with XG, Backgammon.
Is that a descendant of Snowy? Do you know what Snowy is?
Yes, I do. I've lost many a game to Snow.
Is that an XG a descendant of that? 'Cause I don't think
No,
they
no.
make it anymore.
Which Snow?
Snowy, yeah.
No.
I bought that 20 years ago.
Snowy was clobbered by this. Before that was Jellyfish, and the one that Tesaro wrote was TD Cameron.
Right.
Are you familiar with this?
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
I used to play on Fitz years ago.
Yeah.
When that was a thing.
that's right.
Don't think it's still out there.
Tips?
Yeah. The soft
You know,
ones.
XG is far better. But no, there hasn't been well, GNU VG is almost as, it sits between Snowy and XG. But XG has graphics, it's got rollouts, it's got everything. The only thing is, it's 15 years old, and and there's no replacement.
No more questions. I want to thank Stephen for a enlightening talk, and I see he's managed to retain the audience, reminding you that he has sign-up sheets over here. I would also like to remind people that we have an exit fee policy here. That is no entry fee, but there is a jar there where you can demonstrate your opinion of what you've just heard. All proceeds go to the food bank, and Harry is going to take over in just one moment. But I did want to announce also, and make sure that those of you who have been following the schedule, that Ruben Marini is scheduled for the next talk, and the date has been changed. So if you have a copy of our original schedule, Ruben Marini will be on May the 3rd, not in April. I would also like to announce that although I've given you the rules of our seminar series, I do have 7 speakers lined up for next year. I will announce a brief outline of who I've got at the end of next talk. And I also have 3 people lined up for the year after. So anybody who would like to give a talk, you better talk to me or Naomi quickly. So thank you very much.
Oh, what's the sub?
Harry?
First of all,
Oh, sorry, Jay.